Are you ready to roll? I want to explore a magic place with you this afternoon. And that magic place is different than when you have a great idea and you want to impose it or force it on others, and you kind of create resistance and separation. And it's also different than when you have a great idea or opinion and you can't get your voice heard and you withdraw in frustration. And so this magic place for Team Now is what I call Empower Together. As mentioned, I started my career as one of the very first women engineers at an automotive company. And I was eager to share my ideas and add value. Yet I found myself bouncing from those two ends of trying to force my opinions and my ideas and withdrawing. And there was not a lot of power together in that. I did, however, have two colleagues that seemed to have that figured out. They seem to have figured out how to bring people together in power where you could bring out the best in people and really get great ideas and create great products and advances in our field. And the other part of that was we all felt valued and highly engaged. I longed to develop that skill myself. And then a rather profound thing happened in my life, and that was I was introduced to a little-known martial art called Aikido. And Aikido has taught me and continues to teach me how the differences between force and power, and how regardless of your strength or your size, and more importantly, your position in life, if you really understand the keys to true power, you can get your voice heard and you can bring people together in power. Now, it's worth mentioning a little bit about Aikido. Aikido evolved back in the mid-20th century in Japan by a man named Morihei Ueshiba. We call him O-sensei, which means great teacher, and it's also a whole lot easier to pronounce. And in his early life, he practiced and taught many different martial arts. But midlife, he started to think about that he had a disconnect between his values and what he was teaching, because his values were about community and family, and what he was teaching was really about hurting and maybe even killing people. And so he actually went on a retreat to the mountains and farmed for a number of years, and there's lots of things written about his experiences. But what's important is he came back and he said, I have found the true martial art, and is love. And with that, he went back to the place of practice, the dojo, and he started practicing with an entirely different intention. His intention was to nurture his opponent's life as well as his own. And it came to be called Aikido because AI is balance or harmony, Ki is universal energy, and Do is the way of life. So it's the way of life through the blending of energy. And so I could talk about it for days because I love it. But a demonstration can paint a billion words. And I'd like just to show you a little Aikido movement, and I need a volunteer. Would you be willing to come up? Oh, great. I've got someone. All right. Great. And your name is?
Maurice.
Maurice.
Yes.
Okay, so Maurice, I'm going to ask you to do something probably no one's ever asked you to do before. So I hope you'll indulge me. So what I'd like you to do is with that arm, I'd like you to come at me with all you got. Just like that, right here. I know. You know, and it's funny, as much stuff that goes on in the world, we really don't want to hit each other. But trust me, yeah, right? Yeah. Okay, you ready? Okay. Okay, that's great. Now stay right there. Now, this is an interesting thing. Who do you think has who has more power in this relationship or more influence? or advantage. He does, doesn't he? Because if he came right through me, I'd fall on the ground. And this is what we do often in life. This is force against force. The strongest person will win this. And usually someone that perceives themselves as weaker or in less position will not attack you, right? But here we are. This arm is the issue. Now that issue might be, I get an email with attitude. Yeah, get an email with attitude. So what do I want to do? I want to go right back at him, right? Or maybe this arm could be some critical feedback that I've received. And maybe that force I direct inward in self-pity or self-loathing. Or maybe this issue is just that we have a fundamental difference in how we should proceed in a project. And so we get stuck here, there's no movement. This is not power together, this is force against force. So now, Maurice, if we could just change the angle to this way and do the same exact thing. Same exact thing. Okay, so now what I've done is what Aikido is, which is I've spiraled in. And now, guess what? I'm seeing what Morris sees. And from here, I can influence more what happens. I can influence more what happens. So if the issue is that email that I got with attitude, I might pick up the phone or walk down the hall and say, hey, let's have a conversation. If the issue is that feedback, that critical feedback that I received, perhaps what I do is say, wow, what truth is there in this for me? And perhaps I even say, Morris, thank you, that must have been difficult to provide me. Now, if it's a fundamental difference in how we should proceed, I'm going to address that here in the remainder of my talk. But see, there's power together as I move, I spiral in. Now, just to kind of make this more simple, can you just make a fist, Morris? So now why are you pushing? But I'd like to invite all of you in the audience here and wherever you are where you're listening to one person make a fist and the other person push against it. And notice that tension. Notice that tension. Because this tension is actually where innovation begins. But if you push that too long, too hard, or too fast, you disengage people. But recognizing when you have that tension, very important. And notice, this is as simple as what I did before. I just move this way, I spiral in. I'm not leaving. I'm not giving up my thoughts. I am shifting so I can learn more. So let's give Morris a hand. Thank you so much. He was awesome. Thank you. So I have spent a number of years developing what I call is a methodology to do this, because that's interesting, and I love practicing it on the mat, but what happens when we're in everyday life? When we're here at Lilly, we're with our team, or between departments, how do we actually implement that? And I'd like you to think about spirals, because power is rotational. It's not a straight line like force. So power is rotational. And I'd like to just share with you 5 keys that you can make this apply to your world. So the first key we've already really talked about, but you first got to notice that you've got that tension. And I'm going to use a very simple example, which is one person wants the blue way, the other person says, no, green has been proven. And I'm sure you could substitute things in there, but there's no movement that happens there. We're at odds with each other. And so recognizing when you have that tension, and how do you experience that tension? Does your heartbeat rise? Do you get warm? Do you have thoughts that are pretty negative and accusing? Do you have feelings of despair or anger? How do you experience that? But becoming the master of recognizing that is really an important part of being able to be in power together. So that's key 1, and that's the only key that's in order. The rest of these, you can pick and choose wherever you'd like. But the second key that I'd like to talk to you about is to turn your statements into questions, acknowledgments, or both. Now, in my illustration here, I have the green way spiraling in so they can see in the direction that the blue way is seen. And tell me more about the blue way. Now, of course, this is not a one-and-done thing, although sometimes it is. But it diffuses things so things can start moving, and there's a series of questions. And perhaps at some point there's a place where it's like, well, let's talk about the commonalities we have between the blue and the green. So that's key number 2. Key number 3 is get centered. Become the calm eye of the storm. Now, I have a hurricane, a picture of a hurricane here, and I think that's a really great illustration. Because you know how they measure the power of a hurricane is by the eye. It's by the formation of the eye and by the pressure. The lower the pressure in the eye, the more power that hurricane has. And I believe that's true with us as well. The less pressure we're carrying around internally, and the more defined we are around our values and worth, the more power that we have. So some people say that 95% of communication of an emotional nature is nonverbal. And people will respond more to what they feel from you than what your words are. And if you're truly coming from center, people feel that, and they respond to it in a very different way. And if you've got a hidden agenda around pushing your way, they will hear that. They won't be able to see you listening. So becoming the eye of the storm. I could spend days on this, but I'd like to just give you a thought around something really simple that's common to almost every mindfulness, emotional intelligence work, which is around center, is breathing. And as much as we know about breathing, a lot of us don't do it very well on a regular basis. But I encourage people to start a breathing practice. We call Misogi breathing, so breathing in through your nose, down into your center, which is what we call the 1 point, 1.5 inches below your navel, and out through your mouth. Would you join me in a breath? What if all of Lilly, what if all of Indianapolis, what if all the world took a few deep breaths every morning? I think it would be a different world, don't you? So key 4 is declare your intention. Now, in my early story about the founding of Aikido, you notice that I really emphasized the word intention. O-sensei's intention changed with his martial teaching from hurting or maiming somebody to nurturing their life. And because he changed his intention, he created a whole new art. Pretty big thing to think about. But intention is something that most people leave out of conflict. But I think when you think about intention, what is it that you want that you don't have? I have a photograph of a man riding a bicycle up a steep hill. And if you've ever noticed this, if you're riding a bicycle up a steep hill, if you keep your eyes to the top of the hill, it's a much easier ride than if you keep looking at the minutia of your pedals. But don't take my word for it, try it on your own. Intention, really important. And I tell people, think before you write that email, think before you have that next meeting, what's your intention? And my bet with my example of the blue or the green way, both those parties probably going into that communication wanting their intent is to get their way. But truly, here at Lilly, don't we want to have the intention to create the best possible products for our customers, for our patients? And so if we focus on that as our intention, it changes the conversation. Perhaps we have a blend of the blue and the green. Perhaps we have the green or the blue. Or perhaps we have something that would be represented by orange. Who knows? But remember your intention and think about, instead of saying that wasn't my intention afterward, think about what your intention is before. So the final key is to choose your support. You know, Lilly here has amazing support for you all as individuals. It's really a fabulous company. So this event in itself is a great way of supporting you and your team now. But other ways you can support yourself is I like to have trusted advisors. people that can be a clean mirror for me to help me kind of reflect on what's going on, and they'll be honest with me. I think journaling is a great way of supporting myself, and I tend to journal what I appreciate every morning. I used to journal my problems. I don't do that anymore, and if I do, I burn those, and then I think about what do I appreciate. And of course, there's so much out there right now that's inspirational and supportive that you can have on an app on your wrist, or you can listen in your car. There's so many different things. What do you choose as your support on a daily basis? So to kind of summarize that, for coming to power together, when you feel like you're not together, that you're at odds, think about spiral, because that's where there's power. And remember, first recognize that tension, ask questions and acknowledge. Get centered. Declare your intention and choose your support. So if you want to be in power together, just remember to spiral to make an impact. Thank you.